It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.
The stuff I've been hearing, build your own app in 5 minutes, improve your workflow. Anyone can do it. Vibe coding, low code, no code apps in 5 minutes. Your 2-year-old can create a production app for your company. Shadow IT is going to be rampant. So here to talk about all this, we have Peter Lawrence.
Hi there.
Eric Snyder.
Howdy.
And joining us for the first time, the mighty David Ellenberger.
Hi, Kyle. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Now, you posted something out there, kind of a question for our AI community about non-engineers getting excited and empowered and able to create apps and stuff, and then wanting to put them into production. So that's one scenario. And then the other scenario is that they're not telling you, you got people in your business that are doing things and they're just not telling you about it. And I think so we can touch on that.
Reminds me of the good old days.
Yeah.
I say I grew up with Microsoft Access, and that's how you solved every problem.
That's how
and
many
where that
people...
failed, you had an Excel macro.
That's right.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're not wrong.
Yep, stored on a deep directory in a file share that nobody knows about, except
but somehow the entire business relies on.
Yeah,
maintained by Carl.
How many times I've seen that? I've seen Excel used as a intranet site.
Yes.
I've seen OneNote used as an intranet site. I've seen Microsoft Word. I've seen a MHT file of the old intranet being used as an intranet. I've seen a SharePoint 2007 server under a desk used by, I don't want to name names, but Aaron and Corrections at the county. Yeah. All these things are going to get way worse.
But now in 2026, what's happening, David?
Well, now what's happening is the barrier to entry for developing applications is nearly gone. And so anyone with an idea can get an app out there, in theory, and it kind of circumvents the traditional development process. So it's about time to talk about what to do about that in terms of rolling those into the official fold and making sure everything's security tested and vetted and
so
gets out to production if there's value.
I have a positive spin on this that I heard yesterday. You were there too, David. That having these, we'll call them proof of concept, because that's really what they are. They're not tested. Nobody's running 1,000 user tests on their weekend fun project or anything like that, especially if they're not in IT. But I think it removes some of that MVP part of coding that we'd try to hit in the early days of Agile, where we'd hey, we're gonna give you something, and then we'll iterate on it until it gets closer and closer to what you want. And now that CTO, CEO guy can go off on his own and iterate on it until him and his magic UI or AI buddy can get it working the way that he wants it to, and then bring that all done, all ready for you guys to implement. How's that sound?
That is a huge message of hope when you think about it. Because traditionally over time, IT has gone from the ivory tower. We're going to do things to you, not for you. Here's these applications you will use, and you'll use them because we tell you to. Then it was getting the business involved, the people in the trenches, and all that kind of stuff. And now, if they can build a prototype of what they want for how they work, there's so much information there. There's so much you can take away from that and likely innovation is happening.
Yeah.
So all those positives, but happening within the IT department as a partnership with your production team. And like you said, labeling it as a POC.
I see. It's not. I'm hearing it described as an artifact that's handed off to the experts. But is that always happening?
I mean, I don't think
no.
that's their goal when they come to you with the application already done, right? It's like, hey, David, how long before can I get it in production this afternoon, or do I got to wait till tomorrow morning before you get that in there? Because, I worked it up over a couple of weeks. It was super fast for me. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to hand it off to you, David, and say, go put it in production. What are you going to say to me?
It's a great question. I would have to start with the questions of like, does it fit existing coding standards? Does it have the security you were looking for built in? Is it scalable? Like
coding standards, security. Yeah. What are these things? These things are crazy.
Well,
compliance.
I'm a little bit optimistic about the whole situation that those things can be followed if you're not vibe coding in a vacuum. If you are cautious about how you're producing this code and you are giving prompts that are accurate and well thought out and well crafted, and are making sure right from the jump that you are getting the right foundation set ahead of the application coming out. I don't know that it even needs to be a proof of concept that these non-developers are developing. I think there is a world in which applications can be developed outside of the existing flow that can still make it to be production applications. Okay. And then the handoff happens, and then all of a sudden you're handed something you have not worked on, you have not touched, you may not be familiar with the requirements. Or
it's like consulting.
How it works. Exactly. But it's turning your entire development team into consultants in that way. So my main concerns about vibe coded applications is not necessarily whether or not they're good, but what should the process be around that handoff and future maintenance on them. So I do think with the improvements we've been seeing to AI models, and with this is not a one size fits all thing, but if the right thought is put into these applications during their development process, they can be fitting solutions. Mm-hmm. And then it's a legitimate problem or a legitimate situation to resolve, in that the maintenance, the deployment, everything going forward with those applications will have to be handed off at some point. And so what does that look like is the part I think about. Less so about is this a pile of junk, and more so about, can this be maintained?
So question to you is, do we need to spin it? Do we need to say, hey, everybody at the company, if you're going to, and this is a scary message to all also, if you're going to vibe code something, here are the standards that we feed to our AI to help it produce quality code that is in a form and a shape that we have agreed upon through years of trial and error to get to something that's maintainable and supportable by your IT staff. This is what it needs to look like. And here on a silver plate is all of our, our scripts and our agents and everything that you might need to create an app. Please start there. Don't start from scratch.
Right, because the way that, David, you're describing it, the thing that stands out to me is the idea of being thoughtful in the prompt. Because when we talk about software engineering specifically, something I'm an expert in, it all makes sense to me. But my ice maker, my fridge stopped working yesterday, and I go into the AI and I'm like a caveman where I just say, ice maker broke, enter. And it has because I don't even know what context to provide. Where if a refrigerator repair person was prompting, he would probably be able to provide a whole bunch of information.
So right. So did the AI fix your ice maker?
Maybe.
Probably the serpentine belt.
I did all of the troubleshooting steps, and none of it worked.
Okay.
And then it just started making ice 2 minutes later.
It's always the compressor or the water line.
I think some ice was jammed in it, I think was the actual problem.
Okay.
But I did learn that there's two holes you can stick a wire into jumper to force the heater on in your ice maker,
Oh, nice.
Interesting.
which can unjam the ice, and it seemed to do nothing in my case, but maybe it also fixed it. I don't really know, but
Vibe repair.
yeah, by repairing.
So,
By repair.
Peter, you're talking about governance.
I was.
And, I come from the SharePoint world and users, business owners owning IT type stuff and solutions, and you've got permissions to maintain.
Right.
You've got a champion that builds this thing and is getting everybody all, gung ho about it. And then, a month later they win the lottery and they're gone. And then it just dies on the vine.
I thought everybody bought cowboy hats and pistolas and went crazy in the Wild West.
That happens. No, but it's a tough thing because you don't want to say a hard no to people when they're trying to.
You can't say no.
No, you can't. No. I think
it's impossible
it's
because
about guardrails, and there's features, there's reporting tools you can turn on for some things, and I think the job of IT now is going to be figuring out these guardrails and figuring out how to communicate this and say, okay, everything you do has to have two owners, and it has to have any APIs, anything cannot be tied to a user. Rules like that, because users vanish sometimes.
Never.
But the guardrails are not teaching people how to drive, which is a metaphor that I did not come up with. It's road signs and things like that, but it's not telling people where to go and how to drive and things like that. So,
but those road signs don't necessarily enforce behavior.
They don't, but I think defining what bad behavior is part of that.
Yeah.
How do you find it? How do you just go snoop in everybody's stuff? Stand behind them, see what they're doing, spy on them.
Okay, let me pose this question to you guys. When you first started what we'll call vibe coding, right, to sort of get a taste of this stuff, how much logging did you put into your vibe code at the start? How much logging did the AI throw in for you to help track down bugs and issues? Mine
I don't know
had
what you're
none.
talking about.
I don't know, David. You put logging in your vibe coded weekend experiments.
Well, I think I'm an exception here in that I've never actually vibe coded anything myself. I use AI all the time in my day job, and I use Copilot on existing code bases, and I've used it to spin up applications. But I haven't just gone out there and given broad strokes prompts and let it come up with anything for me. So I guess my answer is I can tell you what I would have thought, which is I wouldn't think of logging right from the get-go. Typically, I'd probably take some time to think about architecture and feed those styles of prompts to it. But I would say the things that are absolutely key to production code at enterprise scale, like logging, monitoring, tying in all your existing security patterns and things like that, would not be the first things that come to my mind. If you're vibe coding something, you're just going for some sort of functionality typically. I think so. You see a need and you're trying to fill it, but you're not thinking about the platform it needs to be built on necessarily. But that's all. I don't know. I was going to say projection. I don't think that's the right word. Speculation on my part, because I've not done it.
Hopes and prayers. Eric, how about you?
Yeah, I've mostly. A lot of what I vibe code is usually the result of explain how I can solve this problem, and then it gives me a mile of information, and I think, boy, that sounds like a lot of work, and then I just say, just put that into code for me. But it's usually like one-off scripts, just give me all that, but in PowerShell, and I can make sure it's not sending my data to China and then run it.
Right.
Right. That's usually the scale I'm working at. But yeah, so that in that context, yeah, like we don't need logging because the script either works or it doesn't, and I just drag it straight to the trash afterwards.
You do have your conversation history, all your prompts, all the responses, unless you delete them. But you do.
But
have
I'm not
some.
going to get that when the CIO hands me his weekend project and says, "Go put this out on the server for me, boys. I need this by Tuesday."
Well, then you better do it.
Right.
No, you shouldn't.
Well, what's the checklist for users to make sure they're not coloring outside the lines, to make sure they're not taking things out of compliance, putting your information out in the cloud where it doesn't belong?
And that's kind of where I'm like, let them do what they're going to do, because they're going to, I mean, it goes back to the Access apps and the Excel apps and those experiences. People would build those all over the place, and eventually it would get big enough that it wouldn't work fast enough. And, oh, we need to put this database into SQL Server. And, oh, as a part of that process, we're going to normalize the data because the Access developer didn't go through to any normal form or even think about putting an index on a database or an ID key. And we'll make it work. But the expectation that it's, instant, or like that nobody had the expectation that it was going to be done over the weekend, right? Or done in a day or an hour. And I think as long as we can convince people that they're quickly thrown together application that does exactly what they want in the way that they want it, is wonderful and a great starting point for IT, but not necessarily an end-all solution yet.
And to your point about, like, you got to let people do what they're going to do, is that if you in the case of AI, if you just don't provide a solution, then it's even worse, because they're just going to use tools completely outside of your ability to put guardrails in, and they're dragging sensitive company information into.
I think I have the
who knows
perfect solution. I have it. I figured it out.
Just now?
Yep. You have to pull a permit. If you're going to do that, you got to pull a permit.
It's not a bad idea.
And then we're going to have to do an inspection.
Kyle, just a small hint here, just based on maybe my own experience, but probably not, because I would never do this. Homeowners will do work on their houses however they want without necessarily pulling a permit.
But you got to pull a permit.
That's never happened once in history.
I mean,
look,
in my town, you're supposed to pull a permit to replace a toilet.
If someone just rejects all the governance and goes off and creates a whole system for their department to use tied to their user account, and then IT gets the call because something broke, and they didn't even know it existed. No, it's like, well, yeah, you didn't pull a permit. It's not up to code. That's the problem.
But you don't want to put that hindrance in the way, right? Like,
no,
I expect to pull a permit if I have a builder building an attachment to my house and do all of that work where I'm not watching them, and somebody better be. And as part of that permitting process, they might come through my house and take just a gander and make sure that everything looks pretty cool, like the furnace isn't running off an extension cord, and the water heater isn't, running with a hose hooked up to the rest of the plumbing or something like that. But, do some spot checks on things. But
all right, I figured it out. You need to have a buddy system. You got to buddy up with someone in IT.
That's the ideal world.
Is AI vibe coding not just paired programming?
I don't think it. I mean, I really don't think it is for everybody.
Yeah.
I think vibe coding is pair programming for programmers. David, you were talking about that as
okay. So you're saying I need two AIs then? If
yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna get there.
Yeah. as it comes to pair programming, I think Copilot is a perfect name for Copilot. I think that is exactly how I use it, as just a lot of times I have it on ask mode and just use it as a sounding board as opposed to letting the agent run, which I know isn't necessarily the fastest way, but in my brain's flow, I think it's nice just to use it as a almost like a whiteboard of sorts, but faster. Um, we've talked a bit about guide rails, and my question isn't necessarily about what those should be, but the process behind who is responsible for creating those guide rails. Like, where should those come from? Whose responsibility would it be to say, if you had non-technical team members, call it your BAs, call it your product owner, call it whatever, your director of sales or something, whoever is interested in creating vibe coded apps, whose responsibility is it to create the framework within which the vibe coders will need to operate? Does that need, in your opinion, should that come from engineering or outside of engineering or combination?
The top.
Yeah, and from my experience, it would be nice to have engineering or IT hand out those here's here's what it takes to get a permit, here's what it takes to get your permit application approved or your project approved. You need to give us, your blueprints for what you're building, and taking it to the Kyle's permitting plan process. But but really, I think you need to. I do think that we're going to need to get ahead of this pretty quickly. Or we're going
Is
to
this a product owner type thing, like that?
I suspect product owners will be some of the heaviest users of, or some of the heaviest creators of vibe coded applications, because they're the ones directly interfacing with stakeholders who are seeing the immediate need, and they see the forecast of what the engineering team is scheduled to be working on. And if they see a gap, they now have the technology to go fill that gap as soon as they possibly can. So to me, I see that will be one of the most common use cases.
But isn't that the product owner saying that I think that this is so important that I need to go around my development team to produce this? And shouldn't it really be, hey, we had our priorities wrong and this priority should be higher. You guys should be working on this. And something else should fall, right?
Absolutely. It could be handled by traditional process, but I think now that they're able to be a parallel resource, it kind of has potential to, or I wouldn't even say kind of, it has potential to upset the traditional team structure.
Right. We're still talking about the end users, right? And the question was about who needs to set the guardrails. And I think in an organization like the whatever the AI platform that's being used should be a product within the organization, like anything else. There should be a platform team for that sets the guardrails, that makes sure that it does what it can do and not that it shouldn't do, and all of that. And as opposed to just handing people just Claude or Gemini or something out of the box with absolutely no thought put around it.
I think you also need this to kind of be blessed by an executive sponsor.
Somebody's got to pay that bill.
It helps.
Yeah, well, they're not going to keep giving it away forever. That's for sure.
There has to be a little bit of authority behind it. My litmus test is, can they fire me? Yes. Okay. I will listen to them. And I will do what they say.
Well, I mean, but
that's why you won't fix my problems.
I mean, if we talk about the fundamentals here, right? It's about accountability to what's being done, and so there's the famous quote from IBM from 1979. That's a computer can never be held accountable, therefore a computer must never make a management decision. And that's proven out, right? Where it's broadened to the term I've heard more recently is human in the loop, right? Where you can't allow, at least in their current state, you can't allow AIs to just unilaterally take some action, because there's no way to hold that system accountable, which is why, I mean, not to get off topic, but self-driving cars are a huge problem, where they're making a million decisions that could end somebody's life. And in this case, You can't just allow the AI to unilaterally make decisions that you would normally hold a human accountable for. And so the person operating that tool to make that vibe coded application needs to be held to the same standard as anybody else in the organization who is doing that type of work. And that'd be, but a lot of the, like we're talking about pulling permits and stuff, that's what the guardrails are for, is that you can automate a lot of those things, right? It shouldn't be that, well, in order to deploy an application, you'd have to go manually, like get an IP address, or go make sure that it's being scanned by this tool, so it's onboarded into that, or make sure that that it's checked into source control with a certain standard, or that it's hooked up to check marks and all this stuff, right? Like all like as a platform offering, all of that stuff can be automated so that you're allowing people to do what they're going to do, but all those checks and balances are in place. But it has to be an offering within the organization, as opposed to just, somebody driving their own car in a situation where they should be using a company vehicle, right, to deliver the mail or something like that, right? Like it's kind of the same thing, where if people are going well outside the bounds.
And I would say that's a fantastic idea if your company has the size and scale to have a platform team dedicated to this, or to have resources allocated to this. But there's, well, I don't know the exact percentage, but the majority of software companies are not that size. There's engineering teams are typically a handful of people.
Right.
But so if you're doing things on the fly.
Right. But if you're not big enough to have any of those standards, then that is the standard, right? Like you can't,
Fair.
You can't have it both ways. You can't have, say, we're going to have an enterprise level of guardrail when there's no guardrails anywhere.
I say, having a way to empower people to do this stuff, to innovate, to take some of the load off of your software team, to run with ideas, to create a POC, whatever you can do to assist them and automate some of that, where, like, okay, you can get an API key that's not tied to you. You can get access to these things. You can get a security check done, a compliance check, things like that. You can do these things, and you have a whole system and an onboarding into that. And that sounds wonderful. To me, it does, innovating all that stuff. But there is that work involved, the downside, and there's danger. There's, pitfalls and whatnot, stinks.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like anytime you put up any sort of hindrance, some people will go around it, go avoid it, go through sometimes extreme steps to avoid following the actual process, and to go do the thing that makes them happy, right? So I think we are talking about striking a balance between Wild West AI, do whatever you feel like, and we'll find a spot for it and stand it up, to here are all the rules that IT has given you to start with, and if you follow all of them and can prove it, we will allow your project to come into our fold, and we will make it ours. I think somewhere between no rules and all rules and no action, I think, is where we're going to have to end up, because these things, and again, it goes back to IT experience, where, hey, so-and-so's had this spreadsheet that they've been maintaining for 5 years, and it's finally gotten, and thankfully Excel keeps adding, like, it used to be stuck by the 320,000 row limit, but now Microsoft has upped it to 1 million, so we're covered for another 2 years. That kind of thing. I've certainly faced that in IT, and other areas that they're gonna do the work to make their job easier.
You guys, letting the silence happen.
Yeah.
So, David, you're a coder.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel threatened by this?
It's a great question. I would say, as a consultant, I feel threatened by this. I think as someone whose career is being paid to write code, the ability for or the falling barriers for anyone to write code in less time is an existential threat to being paid to write code by the hour. At the same time, I think we're in a fantastic position to help companies design these guardrails, to implement these guardrails, and to design processes around what future product could look like. Um, so that's kind of a way of skirting around your question, where I'm like, I don't know if it's necessarily a threat as much as it's an opportunity to pivot. And that doesn't mean that I think AI agents are going to do away with coding entirely. I use them, as I've said, I use AI every single day, and it has not stopped me from making quick changes just manually. I still like to write code. That's my favorite part of my job. And I don't know that that is ever fully well, I wouldn't say ever fully going to go away, but in the near future, it's dwindling, but it's not gone yet.
So let's talk
And I would,
about what a
yeah,
product offering would be to go in and set up this whole vibe coding, AI governance system, automating stuff. What does that look like?
I think it would start with understanding what the client's AI appetite is, what is the scale at which they are expecting to see utilization of tools. Then specifically, we could look at what tools are they looking to use, what's their tech stack from their LLM, from what's their code management solution, what's their work management solution, how do they do documentation, and how can we leverage those existing items in their tech stack to create out a framework. Can we use backstage templating? Can we use Terraform to create whatever resources are needed to be spun up? Do they need to pre-populate ADO build pipelines for getting things deployed once they are in there? What about their unit testing strategy? I think you'd have to have a broad analysis of what the customer's stack is and where they'd like it to be. I don't think we would necessarily, as consultants, be ones to come in and say, oh, you need to be using Claude with ADO, with etc. Like, I don't think we're necessarily going to become experts in any one happy path pipeline to give to people. But I do think we should be prepared to solve a path between a number of existing tech stack items that will provide rails on which applications can be safely developed and deployed.
Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what David said, but it's ensuring that that the creative part of it that the AI can do is still inside of something that is secure in a secure way. And so you need to make sure that the tooling that the end users are using to do this are provided by the organization so that it's properly sandboxed off from the rest of the world, and that anything that it's doing still has the normal constraints, right? Because it's still, like, again, it's that human in the loop thing, right? Where there's the accountability where anything that's produced is still needs to fit the same guidelines that would normally be produced. And so where you're a traditional human development team would, whatever the process that they're engaging in to deploy to write and deploy code and then have the guardrails on that apply to humans, you have to have the AI doing the same thing. Like, that code needs to insert into that same funnel or pipeline. And so, to a degree, if it's an LLM or something, I assume system prompts can help with what its intended boundaries are, but it still needs to code still needs to go into a sane place through a sane process, or the guardrails will just be avoided.
Yeah. And I've seen a number of companies that don't have documented processes for code creation, coding standards, what logging needs to look like, what testing needs to look like. And I think it would fall on us as consultants to come in and help them define those procedures,
Yep.
because the AI is going to be able to follow those and follow them quickly. So having them defined in a readable manner for an LLM, be it in like a prompt or in a skills library or something like that. Help them create tools that can be consumed to create sustainable code in situations where I'd say a lot of smaller companies do things on the fly. They trust their developers' smarts and they trust their wits in a way that you can't necessarily trust an LLM at this juncture. And so I think it would fall on us as consultants or as a consulting company offering to help define those procedures in a way that can be consumed by a larger process.
It is too bad too, because the since the LLMs are all designed to pander to humans, that's the trust thing is often overly given to the LLMs where it's not deserved.
Yeah.
Because it is hard. Like if you're asking it to do something, and the reason you're asking it is because you're not an expert.
Mm-hmm.
The way that information is presented back really does make it sound like it's the truth.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be confident regardless of what you ask it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
so
we just heard of an example of that yesterday where, the AI offered up 2 different solutions and they chose solution number 1. And lo and behold, after thinking about it for a while, it said, yeah, I can't do solution number 1. then they turned it over to solution number 2 and it worked right away. But you're feeding that AI tokens and money to think about that thing that it can't do, that it should have known that it couldn't do right away, but it didn't. It took a while to get down to that decision point. I want to shrink the scale a little bit, thinking sort of to the initial problem where somebody brings an app that they've worked on weekends or whatever and said, hey, I got this great idea. You guys should get this going for me. And I almost feel like we should offer that partnership right now, because companies have thrown the doors open on AI, right? They're like, I don't know how AI is going to help us, but everybody go try to figure out how AI is going to help us all at the same time and do it in different ways and we'll see what sticks. And I think, having that partnership, or like, hey, once you get something working, bring it to us and we'll help you get it into our system and work with you and make that process faster because you've got that proof of concept, because you've got all that code. Hopefully, if they come up with an idea and they just want to bounce it off you, say, yeah, let's start on that and maybe help them work with the AI to produce a correct solution, closer to the start, because, there's some acronym where if you fix a bug in the first build versus production, the cost is, exponentially small. So do that, right?
So are we going to build agents to as an intake process? It's going to ask them for their business use case and discuss that with them. And then it's going to, talk about the governance and walk them through that process. And, is that something that some kind of starting point for the users to have access to?
You just don't want to do it as a human. You don't want that human-to-human contact. You just want to have them go through a form.
I want an agent that can talk them out of it. No, it's a starting point.
The end answer is always no matter what.
It's not. I so rarely say no for about anything.
Except for me.
Oh, really?
Anything related to my job and our company and our IT. Yeah, I need space over here. I need an account on this thing. And then I have to oversee it.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Are
That's
you
the best
using, are you still using Atlassian for your internal project? Oh no, we actually never did that. It's
right.
It's been 4 months.
Why are you paying for that all this time, Kyle? You should have known.
I'm paying.
Should have been checking
because
every day.
I don't have AI checking all these things for me. I haven't automated that oversight. You guys know about computers and IT stuff. How would you automate that oversight?
I think you have to, at some point, have it done at a level that supersedes the vibe coders themselves. Because I'm thinking about what a non-technical person knows about a tech stack. They have no idea how to plug into Okta or Datadog, or even that those are the tools that are being used.
Right.
I think at some point it has to be fed to the LLM prior to the prompt happening, or be baked into some prefabbed template, where you take the user's input and append it to some existing prompt file, or you give it in a markdown as in addition to the prompt itself. Because I just don't feel like the people I envision vibe coding apps know the technical ins and outs of what is actually in the tech stack.
No, the
Neither
front
do
desk,
I.
the front
to be
desk
frank.
executive assistant that needs this app to do their job is not going to care whether it's logs or is written in any language other than the one that makes the pretty colors and buttons work. You know, just make a shirt buying program or whatever. I got people coming up all day asking for candy and shirts, and I need to solve that problem, right? Like, I don't know how to solve that problem, but I don't face that problem, so why would I?
What job faces that problem? People asking for candy and shirts.
Front desk at STG gets that all the time.
Oh yeah, good point.
We have
Jill.
we have products.
We have swag and we have candy, and sometimes that candy dish is empty and you have to ask for candy, and sometimes you want a shirt and you have to ask for a shirt. But I don't face
There's
that
a logo.
onslaught.
There's a
You can't
logo
see it.
here.
You can't
Yeah.
see it on the audio podcast that you're listening to. But it's super
Sorry.
cool.
That's my hat. I feel hopeful about this this problem, because I think that the ability to solve your own problems, when you're the person that knows what your own problems are
Right.
and why they need to be solved, is innovation. And it is making things better. It is automating. And it's like, so the attitude behind this, I think, needs to be one of support and empowerment within reasonable guidelines that are not a blocker to the user. It's not a barrier that's going to stop somebody from bringing this fantastic idea forward.
Well, and I do wonder, like, is AI going to help us? Like, okay, you get it to working exactly how you want. Now, do I take it over as a developer with, Claude Code on my right hand and say, all right, we need to convert this to React and make that happen. Now we're using Java backend. We need to, call this API this way to get this data or whatever. Is that going to be the function eventually of IT, is to take those, instead of some wordy description that may or may not be what the user wants, it's now going to be hey, here's a video of an app that you can play with and interact with, get all the answers, and now go do it. And it'll be so much quicker, I think. Although, I don't know. We're going to have to check back with David and see how things worked out in the end, of if it was Vibe Nightmare or Vibe Coding.
So what is this new consulting role that's going to go do this stuff? Is this
It's the same old role.
Developer role? Is it a low code thing? Is it infrastructure? Is it
if we're talking about like who's gonna decide what the strategy is and the guidelines, then yeah, that's the role it's always been, in terms of like DevOps and people who can automate things. But yeah, it assumes that there is that handoff, right? Like that only works if there's a handoff. Like if this is a new way to communicate expectations or the design, then there's not much of an existential threat to the organization. Because I've been around long enough. I've seen design requirements come as Post-it notes, as Word documents, as
napkins.
napkin drawing illustrations, as Confluence pages, as PowerPoint presentations,
Right.
as just verbal descriptions, right? As features in a backlog, like all those things. And so yeah, if there's just an artifact here that is like, I had an idea and I was playing around with it, and here's, I could show you, I could demonstrate my idea, then that's fantastic. And you still have the traditional roles attached. I think the initial thread here was just taking that as is and putting it into general use. Is probably
That's
the
a
bigger
hard
threat.
that's a hard
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
But having
It
it as a
is.
POC, I think, is the way to go.
It can be really disheartening for the person that had this brilliant idea, created this app, and then it's all these questions and did you do this? Do you have to do that? And it's like, well, can't we just put it in? It works. It works great. It's like, why? I want it now.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It's a hard conversation because it works for them. How do you tell someone that the application they built that works is wrong?
Because I've had a history of building applications that works for, well, Kyle, you've had experience. You've described the experience of having an application written in SharePoint work for 5 people testing it, and it works awesome, and you turn it over to everybody, and what happened?
Well, since the function was outside of the render,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, the person that was hired and got a high five recognition award like within a day. Yeah, it was pages, there was widgets loading and in a page customized to the user. It was fantastic. And then with all the extra load, stuff slowed down. Now things weren't loading or in the wrong order, and it was right into production. And we spent that next week like dealing with that issue.
Trying to find it even, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a
getting
drag.
we had to get the right person to look at it.
Yep.
I was not the right person.
No.
I'm going to name names. Ben was not the right person.
Oh man, Ben.
He could have been. He was so close. But to be fair, he was working on 12 projects at the same time and wasn't expecting to get brought in. And then we
unable to focus.
We had a
is what I'm
DevOps
hearing.
guy look at it, and the DevOps guy couldn't figure it out.
Huh.
And every person in that mix, I had to onboard and get credentials and
Yeah.
all of that
Super
for them
fun.
to look at it. Yeah, so it's
those kinds of stories, David. I think that having that experience and that was something that was done the right way within IT and went wrong. And there's a lot of those stories, but then there's also stories of, just Canvas just had a little hiccup yesterday. I don't know if your children's schools were involved, Eric, or not, but I got a note yesterday afternoon and a note this morning that said, "Oh, it's okay now," but they got hacked. Well, who fixes that? It's certainly not going to be the person that created the doorway of destruction, right? It's going to be everybody else in IT is going to be scrambling, and they might have to scramble further than what they want to because it's gone and affected other systems unintentionally. And so that's an experience that you can bring to bear on that person or those people and say, look, I want to just put this into production. I really do. But my experience tells me that that is a bad idea and that we should look at it a little bit further and investigate it and make sure that it fits our standards, our security, because when that call goes out at 3 a.m. and wakes you up and wakes up, your dog and your family and everybody because you're running around and stuff like that, that's not a comfortable position, and nobody wants to be that person. And even when it's not your code, you still are going to be on the call helping out. And that's the kind of thing that you can tell the person and say, look, there's reasons why we do things the hard way, and it's not because it's super fun. nobody has fun writing log statements. I mean, you might put a fun one in every once in a while, but nobody has fun writing log statements. Nobody has fun looking at Datadog all the time to try to find problems. It's way better to have, oh, look, our number of users is climbing and everything's still running perfectly. Our CPUs are low and whoa, what a pretty picture. I should screenshot it so I remember this day. But,
Is there a compromise where you can put it into production, watch it like a hawk, and then do all those things after the fact while it's running?
Maybe. Depends on where their tentacles got their data from.
That's a good point.
And if they use their access to log into the database, or hey, I just hard coded my credentials here. Is that a problem?
If the application can access the whole database, including all of the user information, and it's vulnerable to a SQL injection attack.
Yeah, no big deal.
We got a couple minutes left. Let's do some parting thoughts. David.
Parting thoughts. My main thought is that this situation in which non-developers are creating applications is only going to scale up and up and up in parallel with AI models continuing to improve. We spent a lot of time talking about, oh yeah, we can find errors in it. What if a year from now or 5 years from now, the code is bulletproof? Then we have a whole new set of issues on our hands. The guardrails we've developed, well, we probably would have sold some by now, but in theory, they would get better exponentially, it seems like. So it doesn't seem like we're far off from not having the same underlying flaws that we would be looking for and quick to shoot down. Like I could see it going to 5 years from now, going to some young kid who's vibe coded an application that they say, this is working for me, let's get it to production. I say, wait, my experience says, and they say, okay, grandpa, like you didn't make this.
They're going to say that regardless.
I know. But all I'm saying is that with the rapid improvement of agentic development, it's not unlikely that the underlying flaws in these applications that are being produced will be fixed. So I think it's important to think about where the puck is going, skate where the puck is going rather than where the puck is, and try and get out ahead of what sort of paradigm we can create around that new process. So
yeah, I've never once I've hit my own thumb with a hammer plenty of times, and I've never once blamed the hammer. And I think I think we need to remind people that I'll, in the style of Kyle, I figured it out, solved it. We just have to have every prompt come back starting with some banner that's like, by the way, anything that comes out of this, you're responsible for. So if we get hacked, you're responsible for it.
I will show up at your house.
Yes. Put your phone number and your bank account number right here, and we'll allow you to continue.
Justice will be dispensed. Well, gentlemen, thanks for being here. I think there's more to talk about around this topic, and I think we need to get the Council of Elders together and figure out what we can do and how we can help with this stuff, because I think there's an opportunity here that businesses should take advantage of.
Yeah.
Not to be salesy. I just think it's a reality that
absolutely.
Yeah. And you got to have the right people to do that. So with that, I think we can say goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.